Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome in her Carnegie Hall debut, Ms. Lea Salonga.
Okay, well, the audition process was actually... How long was this audition process?
They brought you back and forth many times.
Well, first, the auditions were in the Philippines first. They had traveled to the United States. They went to New York, Los Angeles, Honolulu, Hawaii, and finally they came to the Philippines. They even flew a couple of people in from Hong Kong to audition. But ultimately, they settled for me. Ultimately.
What were they thinking?
I know. They're out of their minds. But no, I went in not really expecting anything. I mean, I was a very confident kid, and I was certainly very confident grown up. But I looked at the list of the people that had gone in before me, and I'm like, oh boy. And because excellent singers in the Philippines are a dime a dozen, and I mean that in the best way, I looked at the names of the people that had already gone in. I'm like, oh, there is no way in hell that I'm going to be cast in this. But you know what? I'm going to go in, and it'll be an experience if nothing else comes out of this. So I went in, and then I sang on my own. They asked for another song. I sang The Greatest Love of All. At this point, there were no documentary cameras, I think. They came in for my first callback when I asked for their autographs. And I'm like, this is the callback. And then I looked at the list, who was called back? I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get this either. So the first thing off the bat, I better get their autographs. If I don't get called back after today, at least I have their autographs. So I did. I had a Xerox copy of the lyric sheet from the vinyl of Les Miserables, and when they were still pressing vinyls of you know, stuff. So I got Claude Michel's first, and then I got Alain's, and I got Cameron's. I don't know where that thing is now, but at least I have it on the documentary that I have it. For I Dreamed a Dream, and I went to a show called Imelda, and the cast is entirely Filipino. And one of the actors said to me, "You have no idea how many people you yourself have inspired. Every single Filipino in this cast was inspired by you, having done Miss Saigon. We were all inspired to get into musical theater thanks to you." So to hear a group of actors in a whole show say that to me, it's like, wow, you know, that doing musical theater is much more than just getting up and singing on a stage. You have the power to change somebody's life. And it's an incredible thing when somebody comes up to you and says, "You changed my life." It's something that I don't always have a ready response for, because it's not something that I'm ever prepared to hear. But it inspires me, therefore, to just keep doing what I'm doing, knowing that it has that kind of impact and effect on someone else. I had to read, which is something that I didn't do for Eponine. I actually took the time to read Les Mis, just the Fantine pages, and there's a lot about her, and just looking at her decline from this beautiful, beautiful woman to someone who's virtually unrecognizable because she loses the things that make her who she is. It's heartbreaking to read. And so I would be waking up my husband because I would be in jagged sobs at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'd be, honey, are you okay? And he'd be waking up and going, "What's wrong?" "I'm just reading Fantine, and it's just really good." And then it would come to a point where I'd finally close my laptop and turn off the lights, and I'd remember a passage that I had just read and start crying. And I'm thinking to myself, I have made a terrible mistake saying yes to this and even just singing for this part, because how am I going to keep my composure doing this? I'm going to lose it every night. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute, yeah, you have to lose it every night. And it will only serve this role much more the deeper you go into this woman's head. and heart. And Max von Essen paid me the ultimate compliment. He came in as Angel Ross after Aaron Lazar left the show. He's like, "You're not afraid to go to that dark place, and it's amazing when you do." So it was incredibly encouraging to hear someone else tell me that. It was something that I will always appreciate him saying.
2 years. But who's counting? 1.92. How'd I get that number? Well, it's probably a holdover from when I did the play Proof. Interesting. Well, this is a really beautiful, simple song called Married from the musical Cabaret. And I love just the way it sounds, but as most of us here know, marriage really isn't quite that simple. That said, I'm a very lucky girl that I get to divide my time between home in the Philippines and in the US, as well as travel a lot. And they say that home is where your heart is. So wherever my husband Rob is, that is home. And he's in the third row.
One thing that I think it's when they're just very real and accessible, and when they're in the moment and completely focused on what they're supposed to be doing. Because I've heard people who are just note perfect, note for note, but there's nothing, but it's empty when they sing. It's like, oh, I feel so unfulfilled. And I leave the theater having felt nothing and not being a better person for the experience. And what excites me is when there's somebody that I just can't take my eyes off watching them in a show. You know, there are people who are just so real and who make that person that they're playing just come alive. And that makes it fun for me. It's not, okay, so he was flat with a couple of notes, big deal. But they were completely in the moment and completely present, and I appreciate that they give 100% of themselves in the roles that they do. I mean, I've watched Les Mis and Miss Saigon a bazillion number of times because I had friends in both and would be curious to see how another person would take on a role. And there are nights when I would just be, oh my God, the show was absolutely amazing. And there would be days when I'd be like, I would be so let down either by a performance or by an attitude or by a vocal quality or whatever, and I'll be like, that was it? I remember having seen the show and being blown away. I was not blown
I
away.
hear a musical called Baby, and I hear the voice of this girl named Liz Calloway. And she quickly became
The one thing that I realized watching the show is that, oh my goodness, you know, it's the character that has been portrayed in The Wizard of Oz as the bad guy, but she really isn't, and she's just different and misunderstood, and I know what it's like being. And I cast in Les Mis the first time. I was the only Asian in a cast of Caucasians, so I know what it's like to be the odd man out and somebody who stands out because I look different. And so I can hopefully bring some of that experience into doing Elphaba someday.
When you first saw the musical, what did you think?
I cried. The moment Idina Menzel came out, I was crying because it was, one, she had just won the Tony, and two, I knew that I was going to be in for an incredibly emotional ride. I just knew this was going to be something very, very special, and it remains very special because it's a character that so many young women can relate to. That if anybody has ever felt different or odd, here is somebody who will, one, be odder than you, and two, who really tries to make good in her life. And it's incredibly inspirational to watch.
Just got off of the train. Another